Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney. Before we get started, just want to let you know my new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., is available on the website, blendingfamily.com. And if you order it from the website, it will be autographed, or you can also go to Amazon and purchase it that way. Either way, the new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. is out. Now, on with the podcast. I think it's like Jim Gaffigan says, imagine yourself drowning and somebody throwing you a baby. So that's what it was like. It was, every day was a new experience. Every day was trying to figure out how to entertain, figure out how to educate, figure out how to keep Connor safe. I mean, sure, he fell off the bed a few times. I mean, under my watch, but at the same time, I took that experience, and that's how I think I was able to become a good enough bonus dad. Was take the experience of learning how to be a dad, and then flipping it and learning how to hang out with a bunch of women and learn more patience and learn, as my wife would say, you need an adult timeout at times. So I would have to go and be here in my home office and calm myself down with maybe a glass or two of red wine to say, USA. Welcome to another episode of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney, coming to you from the home office. And no, I'm not in a timeout. No, I am not drinking red wine. Actually drinking some coffee. Here's the sound. As I almost spill it down my face. How are you? If this is your first time listening to the podcast, what is this podcast, Blending the Family, is all about? Well, it's gone through several iterations. Hold on. Mike Thompson is our guest. Well, is but isn't. But anyway, what is Blending the Family? Thanks for asking. Like I said, I've gone through different iterations. If you've been with this podcast for the over 240 episodes. This podcast actually started with my wife, Ann, and I, and then it became me because my wife said, I'm not into this. I'm like, cool. So some of the topics that we've talked about might not be always specific around blended families, but we do talk about things like what's a good co-parenting app, animal activism, how to become a writer. These are some of the topics that we have talked about in the past, and some topics might not fit the blended family per se, but we might be talking about divorce. We might be talking about dating. We might be talking about wine. Why? Dating. After divorce, what's a good wine? Or, as my good friend Zach would recommended many years ago, is sitting down when you and your significant other are working on your budget. Maybe have a good glass or a bottle of wine, or both. You might need it. I don't know. So that's what Blending the Family is all about. Like I said, today's guest is Mike Thompson. Mike and I go way, way, way back. And I was thinking about this. It was right around the time my very first book came out, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads. And we were at a conference/convention. It was a lot of fun. Mike and I met because we were both on a panel together. Connor was, oh my gosh, maybe 6 at the time. My wife Ann and I were, I think, just started dating, and she came with us. And the funny part was, Connor was trying to, I brought my books with me to sell, Connor was the number one salesperson. He sold a couple of books for us that day, so I am very grateful for going to that event, for meeting Mike, and I try and rack my brain how many years Mike and I go back. But Mike has a wonderful show that you can find on YouTube called The Father Show with Mike Thompson. Again, I will put the link in the show notes and on the blog post. If you're not subscribed to my Blending the Family on Substack, please do that. I will figure out how to put a link in there. Mike and I talk about, with our conversation, so let me take a step back. I was on Mike's show, The Father Show, with Mike Thompson, and we talk about my new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. We also talk about why I left due to divorce in the household, and very open about things I talk about normally here, which is my depression, and things have been going great for a few years. I just want to say that in case you care. I'm sure you care. Come on, you know you care. I just lost my other notes. There was something. Where'd my other notes go? Oh, they're on the floor. Hold on. Gotta pick them up. Gotta pick up the notes. One thing I want to talk about real briefly has been the vision of this podcast. And I've been challenged. I'm in a podcast group. I'm also in a podcast boot camp going on at the time of this recording. And some of the challenges that I've been thinking about is this podcast. Do I want to keep doing it? Do I want to make changes? Do I want to really totally rebrand the whole Blending the Family? These next 6 months, I would say, is going to be some thoughts going through my mind. Hold on, need a little coffee. I can feel my throat getting all scratchy. But my vision has always been for this podcast, even though my target audience is actually you ladies out there, okay? I am very grateful for the ladies that listen to this. The reason why you'll hear, even though I try and do 60-40, so more female guests than male guests, but as I said, my vision has always been to try and spotlight the men. Here's why. Because I want to show either if you're a single mom, if you're divorced, even if you're married, I want you to understand that, here's an example. My wife's nephew is living with us. He's a great guy. And the thing my wife says, and it is very true, is she'll say, Jonathan is such a great dad. Personally, I'd rather hear that. I'd rather hear people in my inner circle say to me, Tommy, you're a great dad, versus, hey, I really like the way you put your Christmas lights up outside. Does that make sense? That's why I want to showcase and spotlight a lot of these men, because, listen, I know I'm an idiot former spouse. I know it. It's been, how long have I been divorced? Since 2008, I think. 2008. I think it's 2000. I don't know. I don't do math. I know I'm losing it. However, I might be an idiot former spouse, but I feel, and the jury's still out on that. I guess you would have to ask not only my bonus daughters, but you would have to ask my son. I still feel I think I'm a pretty good dad, and I'd rather hear that again than the way the front yard or backyard looks. You really know how to trim your grass. Take that any way you want. So that's the story that I'm going through right now with blending the family. I love doing this podcast. Don't get me wrong. My vision, I think that's the word of the day, vision, has been, especially the past probably, I would say year. I would definitely say year, to make this podcast my work, my I don't want to say day job. I don't like the word day job or words day job. I like work. So that I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay. I'm also put in the show notes in the blog post. Check out the YouTube. I've added more some YouTube videos. A couple of things from the dog park with our dog Otis, and let's go back to this. Mike Thompson from The Father Show is sort of the guest. I was on his show, so I would still say, Mike, you're still the guest. And I love being on Mike's program. I've always loved the work that Mike does. Let me take a step back. Here's the difference between work and job, okay? Job, in my opinion, you can be fired from. Work is your purpose, okay? Hope that makes sense. So Mike's work with The Father Show has just been phenomenal. You can also go on LinkedIn and find Mike Thompson, The Father Show with Mike Thompson, or Mike Thompson. Either way on LinkedIn. So there you go. I have rambled way too much, and I apologize for that. I'm sure a lot of people are skipping already. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Stay tuned. Let's see where this podcast goes. And I'm so excited about these next few months with some of the guests. And I hope you're excited as much as I am. All right? Okay, as Terry Crews would say, your success is my success.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on The Father Show. And I'm your host, Mike Thompson. Today, we got another great show for you, and I'm really excited because we got Tommy Maloney, who is an old friend of mine. You might have seen him on another show that we've had before, and we're going to be talking about his new book. It's a book called My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., and we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be, he's from the Blending Family podcast, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well, and talk about blended family and some other things that we're going to be discussing. So stay tuned for us. But before we get to that, if you have not subscribed to the show, I'd ask that you go to our YouTube channel and hit that subscription button. And while you're there, hit that like button to let us know that you like what you hear, and we are glad to have you. And if you are a man and you're looking for resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on resources, and there you will find a list of resources. We have national and statewide resources. So, which means if you're in California and you're looking for resources out there in California, click on California and you will find resources. If you're looking for something that's nationwide, then hit the nationwide button and find it. Now, we don't look at who's coming on our website, so we don't have no cookies. We are not trying to track you. Only thing we want is for you to get the resources that you need when you need it. All right? That's what it's all about. So, and you will find people like Tommy Maloney on there, and you will find other guests that we've had on the show and people that may have never been on the show yet, but their information is there for you, and that's what's important. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on my friend Tommy Maloney. Now, Tommy is the host and executive producer of Blending the Family, which has over 40,000 downloads. That's a lot. Now, he is a 5-time author. He is a TED speaker, a parenting coach, and once was an emergency backup hockey goalie way before the word of social media. Now, excuse me, he is married and he does have a blended family. So that's why he talks about blended family. And we're going to be really discussing that. But the main focus today is going to be on his book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. And we'll let Tommy tell us what that means by the 5:04 a.m. You might guess it, but if you haven't, he will explain it to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I want to bring on my friend, and I mean that because I've known him for a long, long time, and Mr. Tommy Maloney. And Tommy, we met at a father event where we were both sitting on the panel.
Yeah, way back down in Denver, near the Denver Tech Center, and our dear friend Brett, everybody calls me Zach Zachman, was there, and yeah, it was a wonderful experience because you and I have stayed connected, like you said, for all these years. So I'm grateful, Mike. Anytime I can be on your show, I have so much fun. And hold on, I just want to make sure. What was that YouTube thing again? I better make sure I've got that that I'm subscribed to your channel.
Oh, I thought you were. The Father Show with Mike Thompson.
Okay, just making sure. Yep, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and old Zach, I've been trying to get Zach on the show, and we just haven't been able to coordinate the time yet. But that's a great guy. Yeah. And we've got to wrangle him to get him on your show because he has so much knowledge to help dads and men, and just a wonderful guy. A wonderful guy. He was a single dad of 2 boys, and he's gone through that, and he had a lot of struggles, but he's got 2 great young men, and now they definitely are young men because they're not boys anymore.
Correct. I think one of them is in the Army, matter of fact.
Yeah, he's done well with them, and he's done a great job. And I think it's something that a lot of men could love to hear and would benefit from hearing what Zach has gone through and what he had to endure. And, you and I both have gone through some heavy stuff through our previous marriages and so forth. So, we're not talking about things that we read about or thought about. We're actually talking about things that we have lived, and that's something from life experience we have learned and we're growing in. And I thank you for sharing and being transparent on all the things you have learned, because this book is really, when I read it, it really covers a lot about what you have gone through, what you have learned, and the knowledge you're passing on to everybody else. So I'm thankful that you are doing this and have written that book. And I think everybody ought to get it and read it.
I agree. Thank you, Mike, for reading it. One quick story was I sent a copy to my bonus dad because as you know in the book, I do talk about him. And one of the life lessons I learned from my bonus dad, Dan, was, just how he treated me. And when I became a bonus dad, my theory was I did not want to come in with it's my way or the highway. And luckily my bonus dad, Dan, had that philosophy. And so I learned from him essentially what not to do. And so the other piece of the book was I actually wrote the book um, for single moms, for moms, divorced ladies, because I wanted them to see like the insides of what a lot of us men go through, and that maybe the stereotype is that after we get divorced, then we're ready to hit the ground and we're going to go and party all night and hit the clubs and all that, and that's not really true. And one of the things I did want to talk about in the book was, a lot of us men go through our battles with depression, that depression can overtake us. And part of the thing is that as men, we think it's a weakness asking for help or going to therapy. And I wanted to share not only just my story, but as you were talking at the top of the show, the resources. And I wanted to make sure that the people that read the book saw, there's so many different resources that have influenced me, including yourself, Mike, that I wanted to share not only my story, but I wanted to share, especially with men, that there is available help out there, and I want them to get it.
Yeah, and that's important because I know when I was going through it, there wasn't any resources. If there were, I didn't know of any. And a lot of times with men, we don't know because we don't really seek it out until we may be going through it. And then we're like, okay, where do I go? And it's not something that you will find very easily. And that's what we're trying to change, you and I both. We're trying to make it where it's a little easier for men that are experiencing what we have already gone through to know where they can get those resources. And your book has those resources on the back, and the peoples can go and find the help. And this book is going to be a big help. And just you have the little questions at the end of each chapter that will make you think, a little worksheet to help you think and process. So I know in chapter 1, and you kind of mentioned it, but we're going to get to that. You said your kids should not watch the parent leave. Why is that?
Well, in my experience, I did watch my dad leave. And when I went through my divorce, and I remember, again, I put all that wonderful experience in the book, talking about when my former wife came to me and said, she wanted a divorce. And during that time, we were going through couples counseling, and I was, hoping and under the impression that the counseling would help, but it wasn't. She already obviously had made up her mind, and so I didn't want our son to go through what I went through. That is still, the only tattoo I have is the one on my brain, remembering that Dave, that my dad left, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget watching him, leave the apartment, and then I could see him from the outside walking away. And I didn't want my son to go through that. I didn't want my son to see his dad leave. And so, obviously I'm no psychiatrist. I don't play one on TV. I've done enough therapy where maybe I should be one, but it's just, something you don't want your kids to experience, because you don't know what that's going to do to their psyche, going forward. And so I know it's not easy, but if you can control that type of environment, Mike, that if you can make sure that that is not something that your kids, this is the last image they see of a parent leaving, then hopefully that's going to help in the long run with their mental stability, and hopefully they don't end up having to go through years and years of battling depression.
Yeah. Now, do you have a suggestion in the best way to separate or to part ways and not affect the kids so much, or have that vision of you leaving?
I think it doesn't sound easy, but you have to be an adult. You and your soon to be former spouse or ex girlfriend, boyfriend, what have you. I feel that you have to be adults. You have to have those open dialogues saying, okay, this isn't working out. We need to sit down with the family. We need to sit down with the kids and have a safe space to say to them, mommy and daddy are getting a divorce. We're going to separate. This is what happens when mommy and daddy separate. It's not easy, especially if they're, maybe 3-4 years old. I mean, my son was 5 when his mom and I got divorced. So if you can create a safe space for the kids and be honest, kids can see BS a mile away as well. So again, if you can do it, that's great. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, it didn't, in my situation, my former spouse had that conversation with our son. I wasn't there for it. So maybe I would have liked to have had a say in the matter, but that's the past. You can't repeat the past, or you shouldn't repeat the past. So
now, would you suggest that they don't see you packing or leaving with your bags?
Yeah. So again, my example for me was our son was he was been in maybe first grade at the time. And so that morning, actually, I just came home from a business trip, and that morning I packed what I could in my car, and I ended up staying in a hotel for a while, moving all my stuff into a rental unit, things like that. So you want to, I know it's going to sound like an oxymoron, Mike, but you want to try and make it as divorce as a positive experience as possible, in that situation. So again, it's not going to be a perfect world. It's not going to be, unicorns, pooping Skittles. It's not going to be pretty, but if you can do the best you can, and that's one of the things I kind of talk about in the book is, we make decisions, Mike, as dads, as men, because we think this is the right decision. And are we wrong? Chances are we're wrong. But in the situation that we're in, we try and do our best. And I recently had a conversation with my dad, because I picked up one of the habits from him, and that was he kept apologizing for, in his words, being a bad dad. And I picked that up, and I would do that to my son as well. And it's like, we need to stop this dialogue, because we did, again, what we thought was right at the time. And so if your kids see you packing, you know what? Explain it to them. Be honest with them. Again, have that open dialogue. Getting divorced, as you know, Mike, is not a perfect situation. It's not going to be, here's how it is, this is it, and you move on. There's so many factors, especially when you have kids. So, in my view, again, do what's best for your family. And that's why, I got into the blended family space, because we try and do what's best for our family. Is it always the best way? It works for us.
But that's the key. It works for you and your family. All families are different, and we're all going to have to do different things. But what we're trying to do, and what you drop a little knowledge so you can say, pick up a little piece here and pick up a little piece over there and make it your own, and you do it your own way, because there is no perfect way to say goodbye to a spouse. I mean, the more applicable you can be, the better, yes. But at the same time, the kids are going to still look at it as, what did I do wrong? Why are you leaving that? Is it because of me? And we have to get away from that. And I just don't know how you can do it. But you laid down some good suggestions, and that's what we want to do. Now, in your book, you mentioned that you never wanted to get married in the first place.
I want to take a quick break just to remind you that my new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., is available on the website, blendingthefamily.com. And if you order it from the website, it will be autographed. Or you can go to Amazon and also purchase the book. Again, the name of that book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Now, let's get back to our guest. Shall we? Let's.
Is that true?
I never want to have kids in the first place. Yeah. I think that was one of my opening lines in my TEDx talk, was talking about, not only did I not want to get married, I didn't want to have kids. And that all stems from, watching my parents divorce. And so I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to bring a child into this world. I didn't want to go through what they went through. Statistically, just because you come from a divorced family doesn't always mean that after you get married, you're going to get divorced. My vision, Mike, was I was going to be, the swinging guy living in downtown Chicago and, living life that way. But that's not how life works out. As the saying goes, you make your plans and God just laughs at you. So I tried to make my plans and God was just like, no.
Yeah. I can contest to that one. Because I always wanted kids. I just never wanted to get married. And once my daughter's mom said she was pregnant, I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to get married, because that's what I grew up on and that's what I was taught. But it wasn't my idea. I was like, nope, I just want the kids. Because I always loved kids. So I always thought that would be fun to have.
Yeah. And it's, do you have siblings, Mike?
Yes, I have a sister.
So I'm an only child. And so and the audience is already going, oh, that explains a lot. And it's true. I played, 15, 20 years of hockey as a goalie. So I've taken a lot of pucks to the head. So that could explain a few things as well. But, I grew up where I didn't babysit. I really wasn't, I didn't know the terminology back then, but I'm an introvert. I'm still an introvert. And, my wife and I went out to dinner with another couple and we're talking about, how each of the couples first met. And one of the things my wife brought up on our first coffee date was how I kept telling her, I like being a hermit. I like, my own space. And so when I became a father for the first time, my former spouse didn't really give me a lot of confidence of the history I had, because I didn't have the experience of changing diapers. I didn't have the experience of babysitting. I didn't have the experience of being around young kids. But I knew that when I first became a father, I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. And so I wanted to prove not only her wrong, but I wanted to prove the world wrong that I could do this. So like I said, I had plans. God said, "You've got different plans," and so I am so grateful. And I do sincerely mean this, Mike. I'm very grateful for my first marriage because
Mm-hmm.
my first marriage brought us a son, and because she let me become a stay-at-home dad. Uh, our son Connor is 19, and we have a great relationship. And I'm grateful for her for letting me take that big step to, you know, I was going to fail, but it was, if I was going to fail, I was going to fail with Connor. So again, I am so honored that she let me be a stay-at-home dad and raise our son, and hopefully I did a good job,
Yeah.
and even in her eyes.
So what was it like being a stay-at-home dad?
I think it's like Jim Gaffigan says, imagine yourself drowning and somebody throwing you a baby. So that's what it was like. It was every day was a new experience. Every day was trying to figure out how to entertain, figure out how to educate,
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to keep Connor safe. I mean, sure, he fell off the bed a few times. I mean, under my watch, but at the same time, I took that experience, and that's how I think I was able to become a good enough bonus dad. Was
Mm-hmm.
take the experience of learning how to be a dad, and then flipping it and learning how to hang out with a bunch of women and learn more patience and learn as my wife would say, you need an adult timeout at times. So I would have to go and be here in my home office and calm myself down with maybe a glass or two of red wine to say,
Mm-hmm.
USA.
Now,
So
would you say that being a stay-at-home dad taught you a lot about what women have to go to or go through when they are stay-at-home moms?
oh, definitely. Actually, when I first became a stay-at-home dad, it was funny because, I mean, you're from the Colorado area, the Denver area,
Mm-hmm.
and Park Meadows Mall. Anybody in Colorado, if you are in the Denver metro area, you might know Park Meadows Mall. Well, it at the time was a very upscale-ish mall, and so I was one of those people. I would see the moms with their strollers, with their fancy coffee, and walk around the mall, and I would be making fun of them. Little did I realize years later that would be me. And I reached out to a bunch of stay-at-home moms, and I said, give me some advice. What is it that I need to know before our child is born? And the biggest tip I got, I hope you're writing this down, folks. Try to get a shower in every single day. So my little trick was, Connor had a little swing. I would put him in the swing, turn on ESPN, na 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 na, and he would watch ESPN. Well, Dad would go shower real quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it was a day that I wanted to shave, he would be in the bathroom with me in a little bouncy thingy, and he would be there. And but I learned a lot from stay-at-home moms. The other piece was when I went back to the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and when I would sit there in front of HR and they say, well, why do you have this gap in your resume? And I say, well, I was a stay-at-home dad. And it didn't matter if that HR person was a female. It didn't matter if that HR person was a male. They would look at me like I had a third eye and go,
Yeah.
well, why
Yeah.
would you do that? Well, because I wanted to. I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be home. So yeah, um, I felt some of what stay-at-home moms went through, especially again going back into the workforce and feeling a bit of that discrimination of,
Mhm.
you were a housemaker, now you want to come back to corporate America. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I know when I would tell people that I was a single dad, they will look at me and say, "Well, how'd you do that? How does that work?" It's just like it's a single mom. You get up, you get dressed, you take care of what you need to do, you get the kids off to school. It's really no different. It's just a
Right.
man doing it compared to a woman doing it.
Mhm.
But we are both capable of doing it. And it is, especially I'm sure like when you were going through it, when I was going through it, we're talking like you said, Connor is 19. Now my son is 25. So for me, it's been 20 years for when I was doing it. And you didn't hear much about single dads at that time. But I, I just got up and did what I had to do every day, and that was it.
Well, and one of the things that, even to kind of piggyback on that topic, for me, it was about being present. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is there are times where I'll go through, as I talk about in the book, when I go through depression, I name my depression fog.
Mm-hmm.
And if the fog rolls in, I want to try and get out of that as fast as I can. So some of the things that I will do is I'll remember those good times. I'll remember, the times I was a stay-at-home dad. I'll remember those times, pushing Connor's stroller, or he and I just, running out doing errands, or, the first time he ever stepped on a hockey rink to learn how to skate. And so I really think again I was truly blessed to be a stay-at-home dad.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there when I do have those moments where I'm feeling down, I have to remember that, you know what what it would mean if I wasn't here. What
Mm-hmm.
would that the impact be? And so again, I try and go to, as the cliche says, I try and go, to my happy place, Mike, and remember those good times. Remember being, in Park Meadows Mall and just pushing the stroller around, drinking my overpriced hot latte, and just having that moment of going, okay, there are worse things in life than me pushing a stroller around.
Yeah. Now, did you talk to Connor or the girls after they came along? Did you talk to them about your depression or your battle with depression?
I have not.
Okay.
I think one of the girls has the book, but I don't think they've read it. My son and I have not had, the spot on talk about it, but we've had talks about it. For example, because my son has ADHD, so he's not a big reader, which makes
Mm-hmm.
sense because it's the retaining.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the books we have is the autobiography of the NHL goalie Clint Malarchuk. And for those that don't know who Clint Malarchuk was, Clint Malarchuk was a professional goalie for the Buffalo Sabres. And during a melee in front of the net, he got his throat slashed and
Mm.
almost died right there on the ice.
Wow.
And because of that, he went through many years of depression. Well, I got Connor the book, and I said, it's it's not a happy book. Again, no unicorns pooping skittles in this book. And so we talked about what Clint went through and why he went through it. And so to answer the question, we haven't had that deep of a conversation. The closest thing we've had was we were driving to one of his hockey games, and I just simply asked him. I said, and he was about 15, almost 16, and I asked him, I said, how am I doing as a dad? What can I do to help you? How can I improve? And, he's a man of very few words. And he says, Dad, we're good. But the way he said it, his tone, it was it really was from the heart. And I firmly believe he meant that we were
Mm-hmm.
good. And
Mm-hmm.
so, maybe one day, hopefully soon, we'll sit down and we'll have, the conversation of, telling him about my years of going through therapy, or, just maybe just saying, here's the book, go for it, and see if he actually picks it up and reads it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned in chapter 6 that you were talking about dating after divorce. And I know how important this is and how important it is to be able to navigate that, especially with your former spouse and if you have kids together and things of that nature. What did you learn about dating after the divorce?
It was twofold. Number one, I took some great advice, and I didn't take some great advice. So the advice I did not take was actually from the great speaker Zig Ziglar.
Okay.
And Zig Ziglar talked about, if you are feeling down, if you're going through, and he didn't specifically say depression, but if you're feeling down, his recommendation back then was, maybe set a time. Say, I'm going to be down for a day or an hour or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It took me about 6 months to get out of my funk. So I really wish I had listened to that advice, and I really wish that I had asked for help sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
But the advice that I took and really took to heart was not to start dating right away. I really wanted to focus on me. I wanted to focus on how am I going to spend time with Connor, my son, when we're in separate households, when I'm traveling for work. How do we stay connected? And the first book, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads, came from that. And
Mm-hmm.
so being able to write him letters, even though he was at the age where he was just learning how to read, sending him postcards, or back then, this is before a lot of our computers, a lot of our laptops had built-in webcams. And so my former spouse was kind enough to get a webcam, and so we used that to stay connected. So like I said, I really wish I had listened to Zig Ziglar's advice and get out of my own way and move on faster. But the flip side is I'm very grateful that I was able to just focus on my relationship with my son and just spend quality time with him, and then be able to work on myself before I started dating.
Yeah. And now you mentioned also in the book that being a professionalism in parenting, it shouldn't be our goal. What should be our goal as a parent, especially when you're trying to connect and be a part and make sure you are spending quality time with your kids?
Well, I think part of the issue is when you get divorced, you, for some reason, automatically think you need to start competing with your former spouse and try and get, I don't know, bigger toys. Maybe it's a brand new RV. Maybe it's, I don't know, the latest and greatest car, just to impress your kids, which they don't give a rat's butt about. So if you can build a relationship with your kids by spending time with them, doing things that they enjoy doing. It could be boring to you, but it's not boring to them. Even small things like I still crack up because in our bedroom we have two Build-A-Bears. One is a teddy bear, one's a moose. And these are things that Connor and I did together. So those are memories that he might not remember, but they're good for me that this was a time that he and I did something together.
Mm-hmm.
I got into coaching hockey, Mike, because I wanted to spend more time with my son. Even though I played the sport, I knew nothing when it came to the coaching aspect. But luckily, I surrounded myself with really good mentors. But the point here is, I was able to spend quality time with Connor. And because of that, uh, again, I got to grow as a person. I got to learn a new skill. And then again, like I said, I cheated. I got to spend more time with
Yeah.
Connor. So,
Yeah.
Again, try and have a competition with your former spouse. It's not worth it. My wife Ann and I, we've always preached to, um, you know, people that are either begin dating and have kids or
Mm-hmm.
after a divorce. And we always said to them, you have to put the kids first.
Mm-hmm.
Your ego has got to go out the door. Your kids have to come first.
And you mentioned something in your book, and I know when we talked that you and Anna had some rules, and I know you know where I'm going. You had a rule that you stood by, and why don't you tell the audience what you and Anna decided if this blended family wasn't going to happen?
So we had a pact, and that pact was, if the kids didn't get along, her and I were going to not continue to date. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds wild. It might even sound like cosmic out there, but we again wanted the kids to know that they were our priority, and so our story as far as getting the kids together, and this is something I always tell other divorced families, that the first time you're getting together with your new boyfriend or girlfriend is do it at a neutral location. I never recommend like a restaurant, because if you do it at a restaurant, now you're forcing the kids to interact, and if it's a situation where they just don't want to, you're just adding more stress to them. So one of the things that we did was we did it at a ice rink, outdoor ice rink, where it was a neutral location. It was a fun environment, and we again, I sort of cheated because Connor and I knew how to skate. Little did I realize that the girls could skate as well. So again, I hate to say it this way, but it was a perfect situation. And so again, Ann and I said, if the kids didn't get along, we weren't going to put that stress onto the kids. And so God was looking out for us, and it's worked out great for us. 10 years.
Yeah. Now, would you have a suggestion for a man that is, they're trying to bring the two together? They're trying to, because I'm going to make it even clearer. When I was single, if I introduced my daughter to somebody, within 30 seconds, probably 15 seconds, she like, I don't like her. Mm-hmm. That was it. And it really got to the point where it was like, well, baby, I can't even take your opinion because you don't even give it a shot. What would you say to a father that is experiencing that?
Well, I mean, I would even say in this context, it doesn't matter if it's a dad or a mom. Mm-hmm. you know, like what Ann and I did was it perfect? I don't know, but again, it worked for us, and that
Right.
was we dated for a few months, and I want to say at least three before we got the kids together,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to you want to have that relationship with that other person and build on it and get to know them first. When you bring the kids in, and to use your example, Mike, um, there was one girl that I did date, and my son was like iffy on her. Um, but it's hard because you want to put the kids first, but you know there's you as well that wants to have a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
Mm-hmm.
spend some quality time with an adult. So I again I would say, number one, make sure when you do introduce somebody, do it at a neutral location. And again, if it's a situation where the kids just aren't enjoying this new person in your life, the best thing I say is make sure you came in separate cars. Just simply say, hey, we're going to cut this date short, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll see you later, I'll call you later. um, I go back to what you think is going to work best for you,
Mm-hmm.
and learn from it. And so,
Now, could it be
you
that
know,
the kids is not ready
it
for?
could definitely be, Mike. It
Yeah.
definitely could be. They're, depending on, the situation, depending on how long it has been since
Mm-hmm.
the divorce or breakup, maybe they're not ready for their parent to have a relationship yet.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's why it's in my view, it's not wise to introduce your kids to somebody new until everybody's ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there a way to know that the child is ready?
The it's hard because it's going to depend on age. It's going to depend
Mm-hmm.
on the environment. Um, you know, I remember after a few times of the five of us going out together, and we'd get back to Ann's house, and it would be uh, Becca, who's more closer to Connor's age. I mean, she's 21 now, so wow, I feel old. Um, but Becca and Connor, they built a really good relationship, and again, because they were closer in age, they could relate to each other. They were the ones who kept asking me, well, Becca would come to me, when are you going to marry my mom, when are you going to marry my mom? So that to me was an indication that things were going in the right direction, that the kids were ready for the next level,
Mm-hmm.
a bigger commitment from yours truly. So you know I guess you just have to get a feel from the kids' point of view when they feel that they're ready for the relationship to keep moving on.
Yeah. And really in your book you talked about that, becoming a father figure for Betsy and Becca. How did that transpire? How did that work out for you? And what steps did you take to build that relationship with them?
Yeah, I go back to mirroring, and my bonus dad Dan, again, was not a tyrant. I mean, he had or he has kids, so he already had that experience. This was a new experience. Him dating somebody with a kid, and again, I took those times watching him, and then again mirroring his way, and then going in and simply doing a few things like For a while, Beck and I would go on date nights together. Her and I would go out to dinner and just, talk and, talk about school, talk about life, whatever was on her mind. With Betsy, it was a little tougher. She is a super smart young lady, very A personality. So one of the things I did with her uh, when I was getting ready to propose to her mom was I had Betsy heavily involved with, helping me plan that and helping me, what to say and, just again, having her input and having her knowledge of her mom and, letting her know, even in the early stages, I said to her, I'm not here to replace your dad, just like your mom is not here to replace Connor's mom. So, even at early stages, we had open dialogue. And again, I guess of the day is it worked for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so the bottom line, Mike, is just having those conversations and, again, being in their element, going, if they say, hey, let's go grab ice cream somewhere. Where you want to go? Let's go there. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just showing them that you're engaged, showing them that you're interested in them. I spent many of hours watching gymnastic meets. And those are hours that I will never get back, Mike. But that's okay. It showed that I was there. I was there to support the girls. I was there on
Yeah.
the sidelines cheering for them. And so that's what it's all about, Mike, is just
Yeah.
being engaged in their activities, being there for them, and just simply, again, being present.
Yeah, because before the show, I told you about a gentleman that came to the house yesterday, and this is what he is experiencing. He his wife has a son that he is trying to get to know, and it's been rough for him. And the suggestions that you've given, I think, will really help him uh, because it is hard. And we have to remember we have to come to their level, and we have to and really spend one-on-one time with them so they get to know you, you get to know them, and they get to trust you and get to understand. Because as I was telling him yesterday, this young man needs to know that you're going to be around, because that's not what he has seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to take some time. But the more you spend time with him, you're going to have to break through some barriers, because he still might feel that you're going to leave, and he don't want to really fall in love with you and
Mm-hmm.
cherish you, because he's afraid you're going to leave him, which is what has happened to him before. But you got to do it, and you got to step into it and just work with it. And we both have blended families, and I've done the same with my kids. And like you, I don't say that those are her kids and these are my kids. As I told him, these are our kids. My wife, we say these are ours, because they
Mm-hmm.
are. If they need something, they're going to come to us and say, I need. And it's not going to be, well, baby, that comes out of your account. I'm not going to pay for it. It's going to come out of our account. And
yeah, and let me just stop you there. That is such a great point, Mike, because quite honestly, that was a big mistake we learned early on, was having separate accounts.
mm-hmm.
And your terminology is so spot on, Mike. It's when we first started, it was these are our bonus kids. Now it's this is my daughter's, this
Mm-hmm.
is their brother, and you're so right, Mike. It's about how do you stop labeling things.
Mm-hmm.
Just if somebody has a question about, well, hold on, how can that be your daughter, but you're only been married, right? Then you explain it. But
Yeah.
you're so right, Mike. It's about, it's a family. It's a family dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all it should be at the end of the day.
Yeah. We used to laugh because when we would go out, especially the two younger ones, uh, you know, my wife is Hispanic and her a former husband was Hispanic. So our youngest child is Hispanic. So when we go out and people look at me and they look at her and they look at her and they're like, wait a minute, that don't seem right. And then my son is there who looks just like me, but very light skinned because he's a mixed race. And so they're trying to figure out, and it used to crack us up. The four of us would sit there and look, and we're watching people's expressions as they're trying to like, wait a minute, that how does that work, or how is that? and you can look at it in a mean way, or you can sit back and enjoy it and just say, hey, this is us. This is our family. This is us. And, I'm not asking, like I tell my wife, I've never asked anybody for their approval. That's not who I am. I'm going to be who I am, and that's it. And my family is my family. That's it. Our oldest son, I call him my son. I don't say that's my wife's oldest son. No, that's our son.
Yeah, and again, it's about putting the kids first and letting them be comfortable too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Mike, we started off using the bonus because we never understood the word step, and the word step, in my opinion, always has a negative connotation with it. So bonus was just a positive way. But after, again, Ann and I have been married for 10 years. Again, now it's just daughters, son, brother, sister, all that.
And there's something to grow into. And I loved how you put, bonus, and you grew into now mine. And that's still, like you said, for every family, it's maybe different. You have to figure out what's comfortable for you and your kids. Like most of ours were almost grown when my wife and I got together. So it's a little different dynamic. It's not like they were babies because the youngest one was 12. And I think the oldest was 21, 22, something like that. So it was fun. And it's been a great journey that we've had to bring the family together as a whole. And I was really pleasantly surprised. My sister came to visit in October, and she's like, we got to have a family reunion. And I want Veronica's side of the family and our side of the family. We're going to come here and have a family reunion. I'm like, whoa, okay. And we want all the kids to come. And it's like, no, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's, it's not going to happen overnight. No. But once outsiders see what you've created, Mike, and see that you've created a positive, wonderful, happy family, and they're like, let's just bring the whole family together. And that's all you ask for. That's all you want, is everybody to be happy.
And I think you really touched on something that's a really key. When everybody sees the happiness that you have and your spouse has because of y'all being together, makes everybody else say, well, okay, it's all right. It's a good one, because he loves, Betsy and Becca as his own. She loves Connor as her own. That's great. And then everybody can see it and really enjoy it. But it's like you said, you've been together 10 years, Veronica and I have been together 11 years, and it's taken a little bit, but we are here.
Well, and to use your sister's example again, I mean, people thought the World Wide Web was going to be a fad. So maybe your sister thought, your family was going to be a fad, and that, hey, after all these years, let's do a family reunion because I guess it's not a fad anymore.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think they also, like I said, see the happiness that we bring each other. And I know her family, Veronica's family, looks at me and says, hey, he makes her happy. And my family looks at her and said, I've never seen him so happy. So, they love her. And I mean, my sister loves Veronica. She just adores her. And I know it's because of how Veronica makes me feel is the key. And I think sometimes that as blended families goes, we forget that we got so many people. Now, I'll be the first to say, I don't let outside people influence what goes on in my family. I don't care who it is. It could be a brother, sister, or whatever. I don't care. What's important is what we have. Now, if you want to come and be a part of that, I'm all for it. But if you don't, that's on you. I'm still going to be happy, and I'm still going to go on with my relationship.
Yeah, but it's still hard because especially, when, so, I have a divorce, or I have a former spouse. My wife has a former spouse. And then you've got the kids, you've got so many different dynamics happening all at once. And you try to keep, like you're saying, you try and keep the outsiders out. But there are times where some of that influence will, sneak in. And again, to your point, it's about, essentially keeping a shield up, making sure that those outsiders don't penetrate and get inside, your happy place, your home. But it can be hard. I mean, especially when you're dealing with, a former spouse, and when you're dealing with, different outsides that can affect you. So it's not easy being a blended family, Mike, as you well know.
It isn't. And let's talk about that a little bit. You have a podcast called The Blended Family, and I just had your logo up there. Why don't you tell the audience more about your podcast and what you offer and what you guys talk about on The Blended Family?
So the history of the podcast is because I worked 10 years in radio, on air and as a morning show producer. And for me, podcasting was just a perfect medium for me. The early episodes started off with my wife, Anna, and I, and then she said, this is your thing, you go for it. And so a lot of the guests started off where, we talked about blended families, we talked about divorce. But as the podcast has grown and as I've grown, there are times where I have other interests. So we've talked on the podcast about one of my favorite episodes. We've talked about wine, and for example, what's a good wine to have when you're doing your maybe weekly or monthly family meeting or financial meeting. The answer is Pinot Noir. Excuse me. Another one of my episodes, I had sports writer Adrian Danter on, and we talked about one of my passions, obviously, is writing books. And so we talked about writing and how to get started and how to get published. But the conversation also talked about where Adrian Danter got himself into some trouble many years ago, going on Twitter and saying a few things. And unfortunately, he lost his job, his full-time writing job, and he had to go to his son and explain to him what he did on social media. So, like I said, Mike, the podcast, the foundation is still talking about divorce or men's health, men's mental health, blended families. But from time to time, if I find a guest that I want to bring on and they're willing, then we talk about X, Y, and Z. So with over 230 something episodes, still going strong, and you can find everything on the website, blendingthefamily.com. That's blendingthefamily.com.
Now, where can they hear the podcast? Because I know you're on YouTube, but you're also on Spotify and some other apps. So where are they?
Spotify, Apple, YouTube. So, or just come to the website and click on listen, and there you go.
Okay. Now I know this book, and we really didn't even discuss that part, but this book was my dad's advice at 504. What's behind that title?
So, to put it in a nutshell, Mike, my dad has a very dry sense of humor. And let me just say this. My dad and I had our ebbs and flows. It took us many years to really create a relationship. And today he's just, I love him to death. And we talk, we text, we are in communication. So my dad is one of my, I hate to say it this way, but my dad is one of my biggest fans. And so if he sees some type of grammatical error, even on LinkedIn, like, he'll text me and say, go edit that, go fix that. And I greatly, I do appreciate it. I mean, as much as I want to say, I think I'm a decent writer. I'm not a great writer. But I am very grateful for the relationship I have with him. So the book is about my dad's advice. So if you remember, Mike, when your first kid was born, and the next step is you have to start calling the family and let them know that they're a grandparent. And so when I got to the first call was to my former wife's mom. Then I called my mom, and then it was time to call my dad. Unfortunately, my former wife's dad passed away when my former wife was very young. So when I called my dad, I let him know that he was a grandfather. And again, you're not a woman. You don't know what they're going through. I mean, you're somewhat tired because you've gone through the whole night, being there for your spouse, being there for the contractions. And so you're a little tired. You're a little maybe crabby, or as the kids would say, maybe you're hangry. I don't know. And so when I called my dad, I said, hey, congratulations. You have a grandson. His name is Connor. 5 pounds, was it 5 pounds 4 ounces, something like that. But the time he was born, Connor was born at 5:04 a.m. The advice was my dad saying to me, well, now that you're a dad, do you know what your number one priority is going to be? And I'm just thinking, Mike, I am tired. I just want to go to sleep. I just want to go home. I want to take a shower. He said, do you know what it is? And I said, Dad, all I can think of is just to love him and make sure he's safe. He goes, and my dad had this long pause, again, a very dry sense of humor. And my dad goes, no, your job as a dad is to screw him up as best you can, just like I did. So hence, that's why we have, it's okay to screw up your kids. So long story short, Mike, I tried to reverse engineer my dad's advice. And so one of the things you read in the book is about how because my dad was a chaperone when I was a young kid,
I made sure that whenever there was a field trip at counter school, I was a chaperone. So my dad's advice: screw up your kids as best you can. But like I said, I wanted to change that and do it in a little bit more of a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, Tommy, as always, we always love to keep talking, but that's going to have to be our time for today. Like I said, I always enjoy talking with you. I always enjoy spending time with you. And I'm going to have to take away from, you mentioned that sometime on your blended family, you talk about wine. As I love wine. So I might have to do the same thing. I mean, hey, fathers, we can talk about scotch and wine and so forth. And I haven't done that yet. So thanks for the idea.
You know what, Mike? Every once in a while, like I said earlier, I would have to go take an adult timeout, be here in my office, and I would have a nice couple of glasses of red wine. There's nothing wrong with it. Yep. And like I said, here's some advice. Some days, Mike, it doesn't matter if it's your wife, it doesn't matter if it's your kids, it could be even the dog. Sometimes you just need to have an adult timeout, Mike. Bring a bottle of wine with you, and everything will be that much better in the world.
I must agree. And I'm sure after this, we'll be having this taco night. So I think I'm going to have some tequila.
Oh,
yeah. Go with my tacos. But how can our audience get in touch with you? I know it's the blendedfamily.com, but tell them all the ways that they can get in touch with you.
So before I do that, Mike, thank you so much again. Thank you for helping me plug the book. Please buy the book. You can get the book on Amazon, but don't pay Jeff Bezos. Don't pay Seattle. Pay me. Go to my website, blendingthefamily.com. Buy the book that Mike is kindly showing you. Go to blendingthefamily.com. Find information on my speaking, on the books. There's more than one book. As you can see behind me, I've got my first book, 25 Tips for Divorced Dads. Again, blendingfamily.com. Sign up. New newsletter coming out. So find me on Substack, Blending the Family. So new things coming for the new year. And again, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you. I was so grateful meeting you all those years ago. And we've talked earlier, that's why I had to put you also in the book as a resource, because you are such a great resource, Mike, for so many people.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I really, like I said, I've always enjoyed you, and I've always, I love meeting Connor, and, I'd be surprised if I walked into him today. I might not even know who he is, but because he was so young when I first met him.
Yeah.
But
he was our little sales guy. He was selling the first book,
because he was selling the first book.
He was making money for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He was a great kid, and I know he's a great young man. And you have to be proud of yourself, because you've done a great job with them. And now that you and Ann have been together for 10 years, that's more than half his life. So you have done a great job, and you and Ann both. And I'm really proud of what you've done, the books you've written. I haven't written one yet, and I keep saying I'm going to, but I haven't done it yet.
Day's not over, Mike. The day's not over.
It's not.
Maybe as you're working on your tacos and tequila tonight, maybe just start, writing a few notes.
Hey, I might have to really do that, because I really would like to make sure that I can one day have, that's, part of my legacy that I can leave behind. And you have done a great job. And I still have both books. I have the 25 tips. It's 25 tips or divorce.
25 tips for divorced dads.
Yeah. And I still have that one. And now I have this one. And I really have enjoyed it. And I really would employ the audience to really go out there and get it. You will learn something, and that's what Tommy is trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do, is just drop some knowledge so that you can have the best life that you can and not make the mistakes that we have made, and be the best version of yourself. And that's our hope for you, audience. So, Tommy, thank you so much, man. Tell Ann I said hi. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk in a second, but let me close this out. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Father Show. And I want to thank Tommy Maloney for coming on the show and talking about his book. And it is really My Dad's Advice at 504. And I really think you should get it. And I really hope you go out and get it. Go to Tommy's website, theblendedfamily.com, and buy the book, and you'll read it and you will learn something from it. I have enjoyed it, and it's definitely, I'm going to read some more of it as well. But if you have not subscribed to The Father Show with Mike Thompson, go to our YouTube channel, hit that subscription button, and while you're there, hit the like button and let us know that you like it. And don't forget to share it. Let someone else know that we are here. Not just me, but Tommy is here. And we have other guests that have come on the show. And you can find Tommy Maloney at theblendedfamily.com podcast on YouTube. Go check him out and see what you can find that's going to benefit you. And if you are looking for resources, please go to The Father Show with MikeThompson.com. Click on our resources, and there you will find national and statewide resources that may help you in whatever situation you may be going through. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this week. I know we kind of went over, but that's okay. Tommy and I always love to talk. So until we see you next time, God bless you all. Thank you for coming, and I can't wait to see you next week.
Before you go, don't forget, blog post on Substack, Blending the Family on Substack. Blending the Family on Substack. Subscribe.